There is a version of the American car market that exists only inside your head. It is the version where certain badges still mean something specific, where a car wearing a German crest was engineered in Bavaria, where a car wearing a Scandinavian emblem was hand-assembled somewhere cold and precise and orderly, where the vehicle sitting in your driveway carries with it the manufacturing heritage of a country whose quality standards you trust. That version of the market is comforting. It is also, in ways that will genuinely disturb you by the time this video ends, increasingly fictional. Because what is quietly happening inside the global auto industry right now, beneath the press releases, the brand storytelling, and the glossy dealership floors, is a structural transformation so significant that it is reshaping where your car comes from, who actually builds it, and what that means for the money you are about to spend. Some of the most recognized, most emotionally loaded vehicles on American roads are no longer manufactured where their buyers instinctively assume they are. And one of the vehicles you are about to see in this video, a vehicle you may already own or are actively considering, will force you to ask a question you probably never expected to ask about it. Modern car production has been globalizing for decades, but the EV era is accelerating that process in ways that feel genuinely different in kind, not just in degree. For most of automotive history, globalization meant sourcing cheaper steel or assembling a model in a second country to avoid tariffs. It did not mean transplanting the most technologically demanding manufacturing processes, battery cell production, thermal management systems, advanced software integration, to a country that many Western consumers still mentally categorize as a low-cost labor market. That categorization is outdated, and the automakers who have moved production know it. China is not simply a cheaper factory. It is, at this point in history, one of the most advanced EV manufacturing ecosystems on the planet. Its battery supply chain, from lithium extraction to cell chemistry to pack assembly, is more vertically integrated, more cost-efficient, and more technologically mature than anything currently operating at scale in Europe or North America. The uncomfortable reality that sits at the center of this video is this: a growing number of vehicles that Western consumers buy specifically because they associate them with European engineering prestige, American innovation, or Scandinavian build quality are now assembled entirely in China. The brands have not publicized this loudly. The marketing does not emphasize it, and many buyers, possibly including you, have no idea. To understand why this is happening, you have to start with batteries, because batteries are why everything else follows. A modern electric vehicle's battery pack represents somewhere between 30 and 40% of the total manufacturing cost of the car. If your battery cells are made in China, if your battery management systems are sourced from Chinese suppliers, if the cathode materials in your chemistry are processed in Chinese facilities, and for the majority of EVs sold globally, at least some of that is true, then there's a powerful economic argument for assembling the final vehicle close to that supply chain. Shipping completed battery packs across oceans is expensive, complicated by temperature regulation requirements, and introduces logistics risk into the most cost-sensitive component in the car. Locating final assembly near the battery supply chain is not a philosophical choice. It is a cost optimization that directly affects whether an automaker can price its EV competitively in a market where every $100 of margin matters. Beyond batteries, China offers factory scaling speed that Western markets cannot currently match. A greenfield EV factory in China can go from groundbreaking to full production in roughly 18 months. The equivalent timeline in Germany or the United States runs closer to 4 to 5 years, factoring in permitting, labor negotiations, regulatory approvals, and infrastructure build-out. For automakers who are burning capital trying to accelerate their EV transitions, that speed differential is strategically decisive. Add to this the Chinese government's network of EV manufacturing incentives, subsidized land, preferential financing, local content requirements that reward domestic sourcing, and you begin to see why even legacy European premium brands have made the calculation that their next-generation electric vehicles need to be built there. This is not a conspiracy. It is not a story about shortcuts or corner cutting. It is the uncomfortable economic logic of a global industry restructuring itself around a supply chain that currently has one dominant center of gravity: The vehicles you are about to see are not anomalies. They are early examples of a trend that is only accelerating. So let us talk specifics, because the industry-wide context is one thing, and the moment you recognize a badge you trust and realize its vehicle rolled off an assembly line in Shanghai or Shenyang is something else entirely. The 3 vehicles in this video were selected not because they are obscure or marginal. They were selected precisely because they are not. These are vehicles that occupy premium and aspirational spaces in the American market. Vehicles whose branding carries decades of carefully constructed identity, engineering heritage, design philosophy, national character. Vehicles that buyers choose, at least in part, because of what the badge communicates about origin, quality, and prestige. What you are about to discover is that for at least some of these models, the badge and the assembly line are now telling very different stories. And the further you get into this list, the more psychologically complex the disconnect becomes. Let us start with a vehicle whose entire brand identity is built on American innovation mythology. When Elon Musk unveiled his vision for a mass-market electric sedan, he did it with the rhetoric of a Silicon Valley disruption story. The scrappy American startup that would out-engineer the legacy automakers, prove that clean energy and performance were not mutually exclusive, and do it all from a factory in Fremont, California, that he theatrically called the most advanced manufacturing facility in the world. That narrative became the emotional core of an entire ownership culture. People did not just buy the car. They bought into the story of American technological reinvention, which is why it matters, considerably, that the Tesla Model 3 you are most likely to encounter in global markets today is not built in Fremont. It is built in Shanghai. Tesla's Gigafactory Shanghai, which came online in late 2019, has become Tesla's highest volume production facility on the planet. The Shanghai plant produces Model 3 vehicles not only for the Chinese domestic market, but for export to Europe, Australia, and other global markets. In 2023, Gigafactory Shanghai accounted for more than half of Tesla's total global vehicle output. The American innovation story is real. The engineering, the software, the battery technology, all originated in California. But the physical object, the car that arrives at a European dealership or gets shipped to Sydney, was assembled in China by Chinese workers using a supply chain that is deeply embedded in the Chinese industrial ecosystem. For American buyers purchasing through US channels, Fremont-built Model 3 units are still available, though the manufacturing split has become more complex as Tesla has optimized its global logistics. What is not complex is the quality story, and this is where it gets genuinely interesting. The Shanghai-built Model 3 has, in multiple independent quality assessments, matched or exceeded the Fremont-built version in terms of panel gap consistency, interior fit and finish, and paint quality. J.D. Power and various European automotive quality organizations have noted that the Chinese-built units show fewer initial quality defects in certain categories. Tesla's Chinese manufacturing operation has benefited from a workforce that had no legacy ICE manufacturing habits to unlearn, and from factory processes that were designed from the ground up for EV production. The price implications are significant too. The cost structure of Shanghai production, lower labor costs, proximity to battery supply chains, Chinese government incentives, allows Tesla to offer more competitive pricing in export markets than would be possible if every Model 3 had to be built in California. This is one of the core economic reasons the Shanghai plant was built at the scale it was. The question for you as a buyer is a strange one. Does it matter? The Model 3 is the same car. The software is the same, the range and performance figures are the same. The over-the-air updates arrive from the same servers, but the vehicle was assembled in China, not California. And the Made in America dimension of the Tesla brand story applies, for a significant share of global buyers, only partially. If the Tesla example creates tension around American brand identity versus Chinese manufacturing reality, the next vehicle on this list creates something more uncomfortable. Because the brand in question does not just imply Western engineering heritage. Its entire premium positioning in the American market is built on Scandinavian identity, Scandinavian design philosophy, and an implicit promise that the vehicle reflects a manufacturing culture associated with a very specific part of the world. What happens to that promise when you learn where it is actually built? Volvo has spent decades building one of the most coherent and emotionally effective brand identities in the premium automotive segment. The Swedish heritage is not just marketing copy. It was, for most of Volvo's history, a genuine manufacturing reality, with its core models built in Gothenburg and Ghent, its design language shaped by Scandinavian minimalism, and its engineering culture oriented around occupant safety in ways that genuinely set industry precedents. When Volvo was acquired by Geely Automotive in 2010, most industry observers acknowledged the strategic logic of the transaction, while noting that Geely, to its considerable credit, largely kept Volvo's operational identity intact. The Swedish engineering teams remained in place, the design language remained Scandinavian, the safety-first brand culture was preserved and even amplified. For more than a decade after the acquisition, a Volvo still felt, in most practical senses, like a Swedish car. The Volvo EX30 is a different kind of story. Launched in 2023 as Volvo's entry into the compact electric SUV segment, the EX30 was positioned as a democratizing move, a Volvo that more buyers could afford, with a starting price that significantly undercuts the brand's traditional pricing floor, wrapped in genuinely impressive interior design, and packed with technology that punches well above its price point. The critical detail that Volvo disclosed openly, but that did not travel with equal volume through automotive media, the EX30 is manufactured in Zhangjiakou, China, at a facility operated in partnership with Geely. For buyers who had followed Volvo for years and associated the brand specifically with European manufacturing quality, this was, to put it diplomatically, a notable revelation. Online forums lit up. Car media ran explainers. The comment sections on automotive YouTube channels became laboratories for consumer psychology, with owners and prospective buyers working through their feelings about a Volvo that was not, in the manufacturing sense, actually European. The quality reality of the EX30, for what it is worth, has been largely positive. European reviewers, including ADAC, which subjects vehicles to rigorous real-world testing, found the build quality of the Chinese-produced EX30 to be consistent with Volvo standards. The interior received particular praise, with reviewers noting that the minimalist dashboard design and material quality felt genuinely premium despite the competitive price point. The safety credentials, which are foundational to the Volvo brand, were validated with strong Euro NCAP scores. In the United States, Volvo announced that EX30 units would eventually shift to a Belgian production facility to sidestep the tariffs imposed on Chinese-manufactured EVs. But the vehicles that began arriving in American markets were built in China. The broader tension the EX30 exposes is one that goes beyond this specific model. Geely's acquisition of Volvo was structured precisely to enable cross-pollination between Chinese manufacturing scale and Western brand equity. The EX30 is the most visible product of that strategy to date. It raises a question that buyers have to answer for themselves. If the range meets your needs, approximately 275 miles on a WLTP cycle, and the safety scores are excellent, and the technology is genuinely impressive for the price point, does it materially matter that it was assembled in Zhangjiakou rather than Gothenburg? The rational answer and the emotional answer are not the same answer, and Volvo is banking, quite literally, on enough buyers arriving at the rational conclusion. Before we get to the final vehicle, the one with the most psychologically complex manufacturing story on this list, it is worth pausing on a question that this video has been circling around without fully landing on. Does it actually matter where a car is built? There was a time when the answer was obvious. Made in Japan meant something specific about quality in the 1980s. Made in Germany carried engineering connotations that justified premium pricing for decades. Made in America carrying weight that was partly economic, supporting domestic workers, and partly cultural, tied to national identity in ways that influenced purchase decisions measurably. But those associations were always built on quality patterns, not on geography as an inherent virtue. Japan earned its quality reputation through manufacturing discipline. Germany earned its engineering reputation through genuine innovation. If China is now producing vehicles that score comparably or better in quality assessments, and in some categories, the data suggests it is, then the emotional resistance to Chinese-built vehicles is either a legitimate concern about geopolitical supply chain dependency or it is a bias that the data does not actually support. That ambiguity is uncomfortable, and the final vehicle on this list is going to make it more uncomfortable, not less. Think about what the letters BMW mean to the average premium car buyer. Bayerische Motorenwerke, Bavarian Motorworks. The name itself is a geographic declaration. This is a Bavarian company and Bavarian engineering with its precision-machined emphasis on the driving experience, on dynamics, on the tactile relationship between driver and machine is the entire basis of the brand promise. BMW has, for decades, used the ultimate driving machine as the organizing principle of its marketing, and that claim was always implicitly anchored to the idea that the machine in question emerged from German engineering culture, German manufacturing standards, German quality control. The Spartanburg, South Carolina plant, which has produced BMW X models for the American market since the 1990s, was an early test of whether American-assembled BMWs could maintain German quality standards. The answer, broadly, was yes, and BMW has pointed to Spartanburg as evidence that its quality standards transcend geography. That argument, made in the context of a US-German manufacturing relationship between two economically developed countries with aligned labor and quality standards, is relatively easy to accept. The same argument, made about China, lands differently, which brings us to the BMW iX3. The iX3 is BMW's electric interpretation of the X3 platform, one of BMW's most important global models, the midsize SAV that has been a sales pillar for the brand for over 2 decades. The X3 nameplate carries enormous brand equity. It means something to BMW buyers. It carries the weight of the driving machine promise in a practical family package. And the iX3 wears that nameplate while being manufactured entirely at a BMW Brilliance joint venture facility in Shenyang, China. Every iX3 sold in Europe, every iX3 sold in markets outside China, came off an assembly line in northeastern China. This is not a manufacturing arrangement that BMW highlighted prominently in its launch communications for Western markets. The iX3 was presented as a BMW, with the Munich design language, the Bavarian engineering principles, the driver-focused dynamics, and the Shenyang manufacturing origin was disclosed but not emphasized. For buyers who subsequently discovered it, reactions varied from indifference to genuine discomfort. The discomfort tends to concentrate around a specific question: if BMW's brand premium is built substantially on German engineering identity, and you are paying a German brand premium for a vehicle that was assembled in China, are you actually getting the thing you paid for? The quality evidence for the iX3 is mixed in ways that are worth examining honestly. Initial European reviews noted that the iX3 met BMW's quality standards in terms of fit, finish, and materials. The driving dynamics, which BMW to its credit takes seriously regardless of where a vehicle is built, were described as competent if not electrifying. Range of approximately 285 miles on the WLTP cycle was competitive for its class at launch. However, some long-term owner reports and reliability tracking have flagged infotainment and software-related issues at higher rates than BMW's German-assembled models, though attributing those specifically to manufacturing origin versus software maturity is methodologically complex. The price positioning of the iX3 was designed to make it accessible relative to BMW's other EV entries, and the Chinese manufacturing cost structure contributed to that. BMW's deeper strategic logic with the iX3 is visible when you consider the global context. The iX3 was built in China because China is BMW's single largest market, and building the vehicle there satisfies local content requirements, minimizes logistics costs for the dominant sales geography, and allows BMW to price it competitively against the formidable lineup of Chinese domestic EV competitors. The export of those China-built units to Europe and other markets was, in some sense, a byproduct of a production decision that was fundamentally optimized for the Chinese market. BMW has since announced that next-generation electric X models will be produced at Neue Klasse-equipped facilities in Europe and the United States, signaling a recognition that the manufacturing origin question has real commercial implications in Western markets. But for the current generation iX3, Shenyang is the answer, and the gap between what the badge implies and where the factory is located is wider here than for any other vehicle on this list. Zoom out beyond these three specific vehicles, and what you are looking at is the early phase of a structural dependency that Western automakers are only beginning to fully reckon with. China currently controls approximately 75 to 80% of the world's battery cell manufacturing capacity. It controls the dominant share of cathode material processing, of anode material production, and of the mining and refining of lithium, cobalt, and nickel at the scales required for mass EV production. This is not a gap that can be closed quickly. Western battery manufacturing, the gigafactories being built in the United States and Europe, represent real investment and real progress, but they are operating on a timeline measured in years and decades, not months. In the interim, any automaker that wants to sell EVs at scale and at competitive price points is, to varying degrees, dependent on Chinese supply chain infrastructure. This creates a dynamic that goes beyond individual vehicle manufacturing decisions. It means that the pricing power for EVs, the ability to offer consumers better technology at lower prices, is currently concentrated in an industrial ecosystem that operates under a different set of economic and political rules than Western markets. It means that the speed advantage Chinese automakers currently hold in bringing new EV technology to market is in part a product of being vertically integrated into the supply chain that everyone else depends on. For consumers, the implications over the next decade are significant. If Chinese production cost advantages allow Chinese-built vehicles, whether branded as Chinese or built by Western brands in Chinese facilities, to undercut domestically produced alternatives on price, the competitive pressure on Western automakers will be severe. Tariff structures can blunt but not eliminate this pressure, as the current US and EU tariff regimes on Chinese EVs have demonstrated. And as Chinese automotive brands themselves, names like BYD, NIO, and XPeng, continue to develop global market ambitions and product quality that is genuinely closing the gap with Western premium brands, the landscape of what it means to buy a Western car is going to become considerably more complicated. So here is the question that this video is actually about. And it's not really about cars. It is about how you make decisions when the information conflicts with the identity. You walked into the car market with a set of assumptions. Assumptions about where certain vehicles come from, what certain badges mean, what the premium you are paying actually buys. This video has given you information that complicates at least some of those assumptions. The Tesla Model 3 you admired for its American innovation story is, for a large share of global buyers, a Shanghai product. The Volvo EX30 you considered because of its Scandinavian heritage and safety culture came off an assembly line in China. The BMW iX3, wearing a badge that represents 70 years of Bavarian engineering identity, was built in Shenyang. The quality evidence for all three is competitive. The technology is real. The pricing is, in part, a product of the cost structures that Chinese manufacturing enables. Does it matter to you? Not as a rhetorical question, as an actual purchase decision question. If the range numbers are accurate, if the safety scores are strong, if the reliability data over time holds up, if the price is genuinely better than a comparable domestically assembled alternative, does the assembly location change your answer? And here is the harder version of that question. In 5 years, as Chinese EV brands themselves arrive in Western markets with competitive products at aggressive price points, as the supply chain integration deepens further, and the manufacturing geography becomes even less aligned with badge geography, will you still have a choice? Because the trajectory of this industry suggests that the buyers who currently feel resistance to Chinese manufactured vehicles may soon find themselves in a market where the vehicle that best fits their needs, at the price they can afford, with the technology they want, was built in China regardless of whose name is on the hood. The auto industry is not asking for your permission to make this transition. It is making it. The 3 vehicles in this video are not the end of this story. They are the beginning of a much longer list. Tell me in the comments. Does it matter to you where your next car is built? Or have we already passed the point where that question has a meaningful answer?